CM Punk is the worst thing to ever happen to professional wrestling. A toxic egomaniac, a locker room cancer, a crybaby who can't stop complaining. A guy who had 2 golden tickets, AEW and WWE, and somehow managed to get fired, quit, and start backstage brawls. He buried his best friend, sued his best friend, and ruined his best friend's career, and then destroyed AEW from the inside out. And for good measure, he doesn't even deserve to main event WrestleMania this year. He's not the best in the world. He failed at UFC. He's the biggest hypocrite in it. All he ever did was cut one good promo and coasting on it for over a decade. He thinks he's better than everyone, but can't even go a year without causing drama. No one likes him, certainly no one wants to work with him, and no one thinks he should have come back. He is finished. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Unpopular Defense, and today we look at one of wrestling's most compelling and controversial figures, CM Punk, a punk rock kid from Chicago. But today, we're not just listing grievances, we're digging into the context, the backstories, and the truth that are often overlooked. We're here to present a more nuanced, deeper look at the man who not only challenged the status quo, but redefined what it means to be a true professional wrestler. Let's rewind to his early days in Ring of Honor, where CM Punk established himself as one of the most dynamic talents in independent wrestling. He was a guy who could deliver in the ring and on the mic, and his rise to prominence was nothing short of impressive. But of course, just like everything else in his career, it wasn't without controversy. Punk's exit from Ring of Honor in 2005 was overshadowed by a bigger issue, the fact that Punk, being the passionate, independent thinker he is, did not want to be tied down to any one promotion. He was focusing on making his own path. Ring of Honor was a breeding ground for talent, but Punk knew he was destined for something much bigger. His exit wasn't a scandal, it was simply a case for him chasing bigger opportunities. But instead of people respecting his decision to grow and evolve, they painted him as being difficult, stubborn, or ungrateful. Sound familiar? Speaking of WWE, let's move on to CM Punk's time there. Punk made waves in WWE, with his straight edge persona striking a chord with the fans and his pipe bomb promo becoming one of the most iconic moments in modern wrestling history. He was a champion in every sense of the word, both in and out the ring. He showed that he was the best on the microphone, in the ring, even on commentary. Untouchable. But then, the infamous exit happened. CM Punk walked out the company in 2014, citing frustration with creative mismanagement and what he believed to be a lack of respect from WWE's upper management. The company, of course, tried to spin this as some sort of tantrum, a spoiled child leaving his toys behind. But the truth? Punk's departure wasn't about throwing a fit, it was about standing up for himself. He didn't want to be treated like a cog in the machine anymore, so he left. And when he did, fans and critics alike blasted him for being unprofessional or childish. But let's face it, what's truly unprofessional? Leaving a company that doesn't value you, or staying and feeling abused? Now let's talk about what many consider the darkest chapter of CM Punk's post-WWE career, the Colt Cabana lawsuit. For those who don't know, after leaving WWE, Punk did an interview with Colt Cabana on his podcast where he openly criticised WWE's medical staff and talked about the alleged mistreatment he received. The interview was raw, unfiltered, and brutal, especially when Punk revealed that he had been dealing with a staph infection that went undiagnosed for weeks. As a result, Punk became a figurehead for wrestlers' rights, showing fans a darker side of what goes on behind the scenes in WWE. But when it came to light that Punk and Cabana were facing a defamation lawsuit from WWE's doctors, things took a turn. And this is where the story gets interesting. Fans immediately took sides, some siding with Punk, seeing him as a whistleblower who was finally telling the truth. Others, though, crucified him, claiming that Punk was petty, ungrateful for the success that WWE gave him. The lawsuit dragged on, and in the end, Colt Cabana and CM Punk's friendship fell apart as a result. But don't think for a second this was just a simple fallout. What happened here was far more complicated. Punk was dealing with not only his professional struggles, but personal issues too. And when the lawsuit was settled, many still call him an outcast, a liar, or worse. Let's stop right there. What did Punk actually do? He told his story, He didn't sugarcoat it, and he didn't hide it. He exposed the harsh realities of a system that had let him down. And sure, the fallout with Colt Cabana was unfortunate, but it wasn't Punk's fault. This was the cost of standing up for himself and speaking out. He chose to fight, and sometimes fighting leaves scars. CM Punk's return to professional wrestling in 2021 was nothing short of a spectacle. After 7 long years away from the industry, Punk was back at AEW of all places. Fans roared, the company had a genuine crossover star, and it seemed like AEW was on the cusp of something special. This was a moment many fans had hoped for, and yet it became clear as time went on that the reality was far more complex than anyone could have imagined. But let's backtrack here, because to understand what went wrong, we need to revisit the incident with Colt Cabana. When CM Punk made his debut in AEW, there was a lingering cloud over his relationship with Colt Cabana. The wrestling world had heard whispers AEW had brought Punk in, but Colt Cabana was quietly moved off the roster. It wasn't just about business, it was about unresolved personal tensions. Now before we jump to conclusions, let's remember that Punk never shied away from his personal struggles, especially when it came to people he felt had wronged him. Was it professional to let that personal tension affect his career in AEW? No, it wasn't. But did AEW handle it well by keeping Cabana off TV to avoid further drama? Maybe not. In a company where talent was celebrated for their freedom, was it fair to isolate a key player due to backstage drama? Probably not. AEW, at the very least, should have considered whether keeping the Cabana situation under wraps was in their best interest. By moving him from the roster, AEW effectively sidelined one of its own, and not just any talent, but a wrestler whose value in the company could have gone beyond of what we saw at the time. The reality is that AEW, in trying to placate Punk, unintentionally created a rift that would have extended far beyond the locker room. While it's easy to point the fingers at Punk for his role in the issue, AEW also had a responsibility here. As much as AEW prided itself on being a company built on freedom, they also had to acknowledge that a fractured locker room would never result in a cohesive product. And whether anyone wanted to admit it or not, Punk's issues with Cabana lingered like a storm cloud. This got more attention when Hangman Page did a shoot promo on CM Punk on May 2022, where he said, "You talk a big game about workers' rights? Well, you've shown the exact opposite since you got here." This comment was interpreted by CM Punk as a suggestion that he had been hypocritical regarding his stance on workers' rights, possibly alluding to rumours that Punk had influenced Colt Cabana's status within AEW. Punk would later admit that the comment poisoned everything for him moving forward. Now you can argue whether Punk should have taken it personally, but consider this. You're a guy who walked out of WWE citing poor medical practices, who was literally sued by your own former employee for calling out unsafe work environments, and now this rookie champion is publicly questioning your integrity over it. Not in a backstage meeting, not in private, but on live TV without warning. So yeah, he felt blindsided, and more importantly, he felt disrespected. Fast forward to All Out 2022, after winning the AEW World Championship, Punk sits down at the post-media scrum and unloads. He calls out Colt Cabana, he buries the EVPs, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. He claims people in the company are leaking misinformation to the press. He vents about Page going to business for himself. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's classic Punk. Now you might say he shouldn't have done that it was unprofessional, and honestly, he agrees. Punk never claimed he was professional that night, but it's not like he was lying. Everything he said was rooted in what he had experienced. And what happened next? A full-on backstage fight. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega allegedly stormed into Punk's locker room. Now reports vary on who threw the first punch, who bit who threw a chair, but the result, suspensions across the board. AEW's newly crowned champion stripped of the title, the EVPs benched. The company was in chaos. This would be known as Brawl Out. That could have been it, but as we know in wrestling, it rarely is. Punk eventually returned to AEW on Collision, his own show, separate from the talent he had issues with. It seemed like AEW was trying to move forward, creating a peaceful divide behind the scenes, but the tensions never truly went away. And then came All In 2023 in London, the biggest show in AEW's history, and another backstage incident. This time, it was Jack Perry. Earlier that summer, Perry wanted to use real glass in a segment. Punk reportedly told him not to, for safety reasons. But Perry did not like this, and this is where context is crucial. Punk didn't just say no to glass, he stood up and voiced what a veteran is supposed to voice. Why are we using real glass in a throwaway segment? Someone is going to get hurt. He raised those concerns through proper channels. AEW, supposedly a locker room built around safe working environments, ignored him. So when Perry went out at All In and said, "It's real glass, cry me a river," it wasn't just a dig, it was a challenge, a provocation. Punk had arrived backstage as that aired. Minutes later, the two had a heated exchange. Words were said, then it turned to physical. Again, another scuffle, another black eye for AEW, another moment that should have been handled internally but wasn't. But here's the thing, Punk gave his version of what happened. He said Perry started it, that he approached him, got in his face, bumped into him, and then escalated the situation. Punk said he only acted in self-defense and wanted to de-escalate. He even claimed he put Perry in a front face lock to restrain him, not to hurt him. People rolled their eyes, but then the CCTV footage aired, and suddenly it turned out Punk wasn't lying. Perry did walk up to Punk, did bump into him, did start the altercation. The footage showed Punk backing up, not charging in, not throwing the first punch, not losing his mind like people assumed. Everything he said in interviews, it was corroborated. Punk was telling the truth. By airing that footage, AEW confirmed that Punk wasn't the aggressor. They confirmed he was telling the truth, and in doing so, they made themselves look worse, not just for mishandling the situation, but for making him the villain all along. Let's be clear, no one is saying Punk was a saint. He had 2 backstage fights. He called out the company in public, he made enemies. He admitted he was difficult to work with. But what AEW did after his departure, the public airing of private footage, the continued references, the decision to turn real fights into content, it made them look petty. It made Punk look right. And worse, it hurt their own talent. On the same show where the footage aired, there was a fantastic match between Penta and Adam Copeland. Nobody talked about it, because everyone was too busy watching a 2-minute clip from backstage 7 months ago. Blaming CM Punk for AEW's chaos is like blaming the fire extinguisher for the house fire. Yeah, sure, it was loud and heavy, maybe dented the table, but the flames were already dancing through the kitchen while the rest of the roster was arguing over who gets a toast to the marshmallows. Punk didn't break the locker room, he just refused to be a corporate puppet. Now, fast forward to 2023. CM Punk came back to WWE, and the internet had already made its judgment. They branded him as a hypocrite. Why? Because after everything he said about WWE in the past, now he's back, supposedly kissing up to the very people he once criticized. The thing is, there's a lot more to the story than meets the eye. CM Punk never sold out. He made a calculated return. He realized that as much as he hated the way things ended, he also had unfinished business. He still had more to give, both as a performer and as a voice in wrestling, and he knew that the right time to return was now, when the industry had changed. And so had he. Let's not forget the whole Glasgow fan incident where people mistakenly believed Punk lost it and was rude to an overly excited fan. The truth? The female fan, later identified as the OnlyFans model Morgan Moore, inappropriately touched him. CM Punk appeared visibly uncomfortable and was seen warning Moore to stop her behaviour. Punk's response to the fans' behaviour was not just justified but necessary. As a public figure, he still deserves respect and a level of privacy when interacting with fans. While fans are encouraged to show appreciation and support, that does not give them the carte blanche to cross boundaries or make the individuals they admire feel uncomfortable. CM Punk's actions in the situation reflect his commitment to maintaining professionalism and ensuring that every person, regardless of their celebrity status, is treated with respect. Let's get to the big question now. Should CM Punk main event WrestleMania 41? The internet wrestling community has spoken loud and clear. He is not deserving, and he's overpushed. The criticism ranges from him being past his prime, to accusations of him being nothing more than a part-time attraction, to claims that he's been handed opportunities he hasn't earned. Fans, particularly those on social media, love to throw out phrases like, he's just a nostalgia act, he's a locker room cancer, and he only got the push because of his name value. The criticism have been relentless. They say Punk does not have the in-ring ability to carry the big stage, that his last run was met with too much drama and controversy, and he doesn't fit the mold of the current WWE landscape. Some argue that he's already had his moment in the sun and should step aside for younger, deserving talent. Since his return, Punk has only participated in a limited number of televised matches. Some fans believe that his sporadic appearances does not justify a main event slot at WrestleMania, advocating for talents with more consistent performance records. Now let's take a step back, and since people love to use numbers and stats to factualize their opinions, when CM Punk had a historic 434-day WWE Championship reign, he was never granted a WrestleMania main event. A glaring oversight when stars like The Miz headlined in 2011 and Rock and Cena repeated in 2013 without him, despite Punk carrying the company year round. Meanwhile, Roman Reigns has now main evented WrestleMania 9 times, further highlighting how Punk was never given the spotlight he undeniably earned. He's not overstaying his welcome, nor is he diluting his presence by showing up on every episode of Raw and SmackDown. His infrequent appearances make each one feel important. This is a deliberate strategy to maintain the allure of his character and ensure his matches feel like a big deal. One of Punk's defining qualities in WWE was his ability to elevate almost anyone he worked with. Look at his matches with guys like Cena, Bryan, or even talents like Zack Ryder and The Miz. Punk is a ring general who can make any storyline work. He has the ability to adjust his style to fit his opponents, and that's why his matches are consistently good, if not great. A triple threat match with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, both who are elite performers in their own right, has the potential to be an instant classic. Let's be clear, CM Punk is a polarizing figure. He's never been afraid to speak his mind, often to his own detriment. He's made decisions that many in the industry would never dare to make, and that's what's made him both a star and a lightning rod for controversy. But does that justify the relentless backlash that's followed him for years? Does that mean everything's accomplished is negated because he's made mistakes or caused a stir? Absolutely not. Look at the landscape of professional wrestling, and one thing stands out. CM Punk changed the game. He didn't just walk into WWE and accept what was given to him. He fought for his place. He was the guy who was told he was unmarketable, and yet he became the biggest star in the company, drawing crowds, selling merchandise, and leading the change during one of WWE's most memorable moments. But once you've climbed that height, it's not just the fans who took aim at you. It's the entire industry that feels threatened by your power, your voice, and your refusal to conform. Then came AEW, and with it more drama, some of it deserved, some of it exaggerated. But let's not pretend that the problems he faced were all his doing. Punk, for all his faults, was the guy who raised the bar in AEW, pushing the promotion to new heights in terms of credibility and viewership. And when the backstage chaos came to light, it was framed as Punk being a troublemaker. But let's be real, this was not a one-sided issue. This is a company that had grown too quickly, with too many egos, too little structure. Punk wasn't just fighting for respect, he was fighting for order, for something more than chaos. He is the one genuine article in a world of counterfeit bucks. I know we haven't even mentioned his 2 fights that he lost at UFC. Clearly, that discredits everything that I've just said. Let's forget the sold out arenas, the promos, the merch that outsold Cena. Because he tapped out in a real fight, he must be a fraud, right? Let's be real though, because Punk didn't go to UFC to win a belt. He went to prove he had the guts to actually try. And yeah, he actually got beat like a drum twice, but at least he had the guts to go in there. Most of us, let's be real, wouldn't even survive the walkout music. I believe there's an agenda because he was seen as a scapegoat. Oh, WWE isn't real. Proof? Look at Punk, who was kicking it in WWE, yet when he went to the UFC, he lost twice. Yeah, that's great, but everyone knows those are 2 different sports. So hate him or love him, you have to respect him to go to the UFC at his age and try his best. This isn't just about defending a man, it's about the idea that the truth isn't always popular, but it's always worth defending. This is Unpopular Defense, and we give the voice to the voiceless.